Today we are going to be talking about histamine intolerance, what it is, and if you should be avoiding high histamine foods. The symptoms of a histamine intolerance look a lot like seasonal allergies. You might experience congestion, a runny nose, hives, itchy skin, headaches, or joint pain after eating histamine-rich foods. An intolerance happens when you have a buildup of histamine in the body and a lack of the enzyme responsible for breaking it down. This imbalance can be caused by pain medications and other drugs, GI disorders, and consuming certain foods. In this video, we are going to talk about what histamine intolerance is, what foods are high in histamine, and what foods trigger a histamine response, and also what steps you can take to improve symptoms. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Kate. I'm a health coach and I post videos on a high-fat, nutrient-dense way of eating. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, feel free to share, and make sure to subscribe. And make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where I share new posts every single day. Histamine intolerance is not something that everyone needs to worry about. Later in this video, I'm going to give you a list of foods that are high in histamine, and if you eat these foods and experience symptoms, then the information in this video applies to you. However, if you eat these foods and do not experience symptoms, there isn't really a reason to eat a low histamine diet because your body is producing the correct amount of enzymes to break it down. One thing I will mention before we begin is that histamine is present in both plant and animal foods, so this topic is relevant no matter your way of eating. What is histamine? Histamine is a chemical compound created by the body that is important for several functions. It is released when we become injured as part of the immune response. It triggers the release of stomach acid needed for digestion, and it communicates messages to the brain. So histamine itself isn't a bad thing. It's actually really important. When it becomes a problem is when we have a buildup of it in our system and our bodies can't properly break it down. When this happens, we become histamine intolerant. Now, histamine intolerance isn't actually a sensitivity to histamine, so the label is a little bit confusing. Our bodies produce an enzyme called diamine oxidase, also known as DAO. This is responsible for breaking down the histamine that we get from food, but sometimes this production might become impaired. Reasons this happens include certain medications such as pain medications, antibiotics, diuretics, and antidepressants, GI disorders such as leaky gut, IBS, or a bacteria overgrowth, consuming high amounts of foods that block the enzyme, and consuming high amounts of foods that trigger a histamine response. Now, there are 3 groups of food that are relevant to those who are histamine intolerant: foods and medications that block DAO production, foods that are high in histamine, and foods that trigger a histamine response. If you suspect that you're histamine intolerant, these are some of the foods, or I should say drinks, that block DAO production: alcohol, black tea, green tea, and energy drinks. Medications that interfere with DAO production include pain medications such as aspirin, antibiotics, diuretics, heart medications, muscle relaxers, and antidepressants. Now, of course, I'm not saying to stop taking any of your prescribed medication, but it is useful to be aware of if you're histamine intolerant. There are foods and supplements that contain DAO that I will talk about later in this video as well. Foods that are high in histamines include fermented vegetables such as sauerkraut and kimchi, fermented dairy such as aged cheeses and yogurts, fermented beverages such as alcohol and kombucha, smoked foods such as smoked meat or smoked salmon, dried foods such as dried fruit or beef jerky, canned foods such as pickles or fish, pork, shellfish, avocados, eggplants, and spinach. In general, any foods that are fermented or aged are going to have higher histamine levels, and any foods that are fresh are going to have lower levels. Again, I want to reiterate that if you are not histamine intolerant, the histamine content in food isn't a reason to avoid them. But if you find that when you do eat these foods, you experience symptoms such as nasal congestion or a runny nose, hives or itchy skin, headaches, fatigue, or nausea, you might be histamine intolerant. Foods that trigger a histamine release include tomatoes, bananas, wheat, beans, citrus fruit, certain nuts such as walnuts, cashews, and peanuts, and food dyes and other food additives. So what can you do to improve a histamine intolerance? First off, you can eat a low histamine diet. Limiting foods that are high in histamine or that trigger a histamine release is going to be beneficial. Sticking to mostly fresh foods and avoiding anything that is aged is going to be a good place to start. Fresh meat will have a lower histamine content than meat that has been in your fridge for a couple of days. Fresh seafood is good as well, with the exception of shellfish. Eggs are low in histamine. Fresh cheese, fresh vegetables, and fruit, with the exception of the high histamine ones, which I mentioned before. Coconuts, olives, and mushrooms are all low. Second off, you can eat foods containing DAO or supplement with it. Beef kidney is an example of a food that contains DAO. Although it is not the most appealing food, you can take beef kidney capsules as well. Grassland Nutrition also has a product called beef kidney snacks, which are freeze-dried chunks of kidney. These are a great way to include it in your diet as well, especially if you are intimidated by cooking it. Beyond that, a vitamin B6 deficiency has been linked to reduced DAO activity, so replenishing that has been thought to be helpful as well. Beef liver is a good source of vitamin B6, and meat in general, fish, eggs, all good sources. Vitamin B6 is mainly found in protein-rich foods, but it is also found in starchy vegetables such as potatoes as well. While there isn't considered to be a cure for histamine intolerance, a lot of people see improvements in their symptoms when they increase DAO and decrease the histamine buildup. Anyways, guys, that is all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments down below if you have experienced a histamine intolerance, and was there any method that you found to be particularly effective? If you like this video, I think you will also like my video on vitamin D, which you can check out here. If you want to catch up on my most recent upload, you can click here. And if you're interested in starting a keto or carnivore diet, you can check out my coaching programs here. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time. Bye.